In the coming weeks, you might receive letters like this one. I know it well because it's the second I receive. It will tell you that your tap water has PFAS inside and, if you're lucky like me, that your local water utility is taking measures to remedy it. Now, if you don't know what PFAS is and why you received that letter, I get it.
This is scary.
A pretty complex chemical compound lurking in the water you drink. For sure, that's neither natural nor good health news. And you can be rightfully angry that this percolated into the water that you give to your children or your elder parents, and in the water that you use to cook your pasta or to brush your teeth. Your anger is legit. And I've seen many of my neighbors over the past 2 years take it to social media and local gatherings and be vocal about how they felt let down by their water provider, how everyone failed them, and how that drove them nuts. Now, I'm mad as well, but for different reasons. I'll come to that later. What I want to discuss today is why are we receiving those letters, aka why did the authorities wait until now to tell us? What do they mean? Have we been drinking contaminated water so far? And what can you, me, everyone do about it? For instance, is bottled water any safer? And stay till the end, because I'll give you 3 actionable advice you can use to protect your family. Now, I won't go into the details of what PFAS is because I did this video already. I'll link it here if you missed it. So why are we receiving those letters? Well, if I were trivial, I'd say because chemical analysis is a...
Wait, what did you just say?
Sorry, but seriously, water analytics work in a pretty simple way. You find only what you're looking for. If you're measuring organic contamination, you'll get an organic contamination value. If you're measuring suspended solids, you'll get a suspended solids value. And if you're measuring PFAS content, you'll maybe get PFAS content. There are large spectrum approaches which will tell you something undefined is there, but first, they are very expensive. Second, very few water utilities will have the tools and the trained people for those approaches. And third, water analytics is not really a field for creativity. What I mean by that is that a technician doesn't enter his lab in the morning thinking, what will I measure today? No. Regulations tell you to the letter what you must measure and how you must measure it. This all started a little over a century ago when the US Public Health Service commended that municipal water companies tested their water for the presence of fecal matter in it. Yes, poo in your drinking water. And they did so by requesting to put that water in milk for 2 days at body temperature to then check if bubbles were forming, which meant milk was fermenting and you'd probably want to avoid drinking that water. 110 years later, we've got many more procedures and many more parameters to measure. But one thing remained constant across history. As soon as measurement techniques improved and allowed the detection of pollutants in even smaller concentrations, we also found those macropollutants, then micropollutants, then nanopollutants, and now picopollutants, I guess, or ultra-trace contaminants. Water is not the universal solvent for nothing. If there's something out there, it will solve in water. Sometimes we're happy about it, think of minerals for instance, and sometimes we're concerned about it and we put treatments in place to remove it. So back to our PFAS. Even though the larger PFAS family has been widely used in the industry and our daily lives for decades,
some people use a little oil or butter when they cook so that things don't stick to the pan. But I use polytetrafluoroethylene.
Some sports call it non-stick for short.
It's only in 2001, with a paper from the University of Toronto, that a study proved possible for the first time to measure PFAS in water at nanogram per liter or parts per trillion level. And when a technique gets available at university lab scale and cost, you can imagine it still takes a while until sufficient labs out there equip themselves and train themselves to the methodology so that the measurements can be replicated at scale. And once those measures start coming in, they also come in with a debate. Okay, now we know there's this in water at that concentration.
Yeah, surprise!
But what does it mean? Is it good news, bad news, or no news? Decision makers and scientists will debate for a while and they might, and oftentimes might not, reach a consensus. For instance, cocaine in wastewater and surface water at trace level was concerning enough. Those finance people, how do you think they work around the clock? For Switzerland to take a law on micropollutant removal, but caffeine and paracetamol at trace level in many tap waters around the globe, that's fine, I guess. I hope. With PFAS, as for most substances that can be present in water, the approach has been to first measure the extent of the Problem with quotation marks because a consensus needs to be reached, so measure first, then decide what we do about it. Is it fine or should we aim to remove it? And now, as an insider and a veteran at my advanced age of the micropollutant battles 10 years ago,
still have PTSD.
I never thought things would go as fast as they went with PFAS. Like, literally, 2001 we can detect it for the first time at double-digit ppt level in water. 2012, the EPA comes up with a reporting rule on legacy PFAS at double-digit ppt level. 11 years? At water space, it's crazy fast. And since then, it even accelerated with several states in the US doubling down on the EPA and the EPA itself coming back with a mandatory reporting for every system serving over 3,300 people, but also slightly stricter reporting rules in the European Union that will be enforced next January, and then also similar or again stricter rules in the UK, Japan, Australia or the Nordics. So why did I receive that letter at home? Well, because my local utility, in this case Veolia, is a good pupil and measured the sum of 20 PFAS in my tap water even before the mandatory had to by next January. And if the authorities know about the presence of PFAS beforehand, well, you might say they suspected it enough to enforce a monitoring rule, but I guess we can give them credit here as well in saying that, for once, they moved fast. And let me give you a spoiler, as I told you in the opening, if you haven't received a letter yet, you have good chances of receiving one as the monitoring rule continues to roll out. Mine is an outlier because my total 20 PFAS exceeds 100 nanogram per liter, which can be explained because at that time I was living next to an airport, and airports are known to sometimes be PFAS sources. Such cases will happen in tap water in single-digit percentage cases, which is, that being said, still about 400,000 times higher odds than winning the lottery, even though arguably a lottery you don't want to win. But finding some PFAS in a tap water sample is a high odds coin flip in Europe and a 1 in 3 odds in the US. And if we now go for the total PFAS criterion, so all PFAS together must be below the 0.5 milligram per liter threshold, half of Europe's surface water plants are out of spec. And the main reason why that total PFAS rule has not been the only one to start with is that until this August, there was no analytical guidance as to how to measure total PFAS, at least in the European Union. Which leads us to the next question. Okay, now we know there's a substantial probability that PFAS is in your drinking water at some concentration, and we know that it's in mine at a high one. But what does that mean from a health perspective? Well, the last time I ventured into those waters, I got insulted like I rarely do.
I like that.
Well, not so much, honestly, so I leave that one to health specialists. I'm a water specialist. Everyone should stay in their lane, I believe. I'm nevertheless linking you some studies in the notes below, so check them out and forge your own opinion. The short of it is, even those concentrations are certainly not an instant killer, but over time they can push your blood PFAS to levels linked with weaker vaccine protection, higher cholesterol, and pregnancy risks, to just name 3 parameters. But what I can say after my previous long development...
Far too long, honestly.
I know. Sorry. Well, what I can say is that those measures actually don't change much, if anything. I mean, the difference between before and after getting the letter is that an analysis was taken and now you know, but PFAS were there before. It's not a sudden burst. We've been using them for decades. All that changes is that now, eventually, measures will be taken and that PFAS will be removed. Again, not instantly, but it will. It's the law. So in between, what can you do? Well, let me tell you what my neighbors tried and why I'd believe it's of limited efficiency. First, usually when you receive a water quality warning, it's often associated with a boiling water notice. Boil your water, it will kill the bacteria inside, you're good to go. While PFAS are synthetic chemicals. They don't care about boiling. Boil them as much as you want, unless you have a pressure cooker able to turn your water anywhere close to 374 degrees and 221 times the atmospheric pressure. PFAS will look at you with a murky smile somewhat like this.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
So forget boiling. Next idea, let's turn to bottled water. First, there's a cost issue with that one. Bottled water is at best 100 times more expensive than tap water and, on average, rather 200 times more expensive. You may argue that you're only using bottled water when you're drinking, which is 2 liters out of your 150 liters daily expense, but if we take a cost of 1 for 1 liter of tap water, that's a cost of 150 if you use tap water only, and a cost of 200 plus 148 if you're drinking bottled water, which is still over twice more expensive. And as PFAS doesn't disappear when you boil your water, you'll probably want to cook with bottled water and to brush your teeth with bottled water, and maybe even to shower with bottled water. And now, that's 25% of your water use that has to be done with bottled water. Let's brush over how inconvenient it will be to shower with bottled water. From a pure cost perspective, now we're at 37.5 times 100 plus 112.5, which is, sorry for the maths, nearly 40 times more expensive than tap water. Meanwhile, the OECD says that the average family spends roughly 1% of their income on water. Are we all rich enough so that we don't care for it to become 40% of our income?
Doubt it.
I thought so. And that's not even taking into account the 25% lower income households that spend 1.5 to 3% of their income on water today. Multiply that by 40 and now they would spend their entire income on water. As a reminder, there is a human right to affordable water, and affordability is defined by the United Nations at 3% of the household's income, not 40 or 120%. So there's a cost problem, but let's assume we're all rich enough, so we don't care. What tells us, though, that bottled water has no PFAS in it? Remember, before we received that letter at home, we were all blissfully ignorant that our tap water had PFAS in it. So why would it be any different for bottled water? Because they test it. Wait. Do they? No, they don't, or at least bottled water companies don't have to test their water for PFAS, and even if they do, they certainly don't have to tell you about the results. In the US, there's a discussion ongoing on if they should test water between the bottled water companies and the EPA, and the discussion revolves around testing that would remain private between the companies and FDA inspectors. In talks, not adopted yet, and certainly not in the close future either, because
There'll be a little disturbance.
in Europe, bottled water is exempt from the Drinking Water Directive. It has to be tested for fluoride, arsenic, bromate and the likes, but nothing in PFAS. Japan is in talks of measuring it, Australia and Canada in even earlier talks, and the only outlier I found is the state of New Jersey.
New Jersey is like one of the most important states in America.
Sure.
But no regulation doesn't mean there is PFAS in bottled water. Right!
Well, what do we have here?
What we have here is a 2021 Johns Hopkins University study on 101 US bottled water brands, and they did find PFAS in 39% of the bottled water samples. So, lesson 1, there's PFAS in bottled water, but it doesn't stop there. What the study shows as well is that if we now distinguish between spring waters and purified water, so in layman terms between raw natural water selected at the spring or treated water that goes through filtration steps that resemble tap water production, well, there is significantly less PFAS in the filtered water, aka somewhat tap water that's bottled, than in the supposedly pristine spring waters. Why so? Well, because we, the water professionals, know how to remove PFAS from water. Use activated carbon, ion exchanger, or, as in the case of those bottled water, reverse osmosis, and job done, PFAS is out. The only reason we don't do it all the time for tap water is that it adds about 15% more cost to the production of that water, or said differently, about 0.03 cents per liter, and people don't want to pay 0.03 cents per liter additionally.
Oh no, that's much too expensive for me.
But it seems they're fine with paying their Dasani bottle $1.3 per liter. Beyond my understanding, but I think this shows that bottled water is expensive, absolutely doesn't guarantee the absence of PFAS, and hence doesn't sound like the solution to our problem here. Now let's look at the last idea, just for the fun, and also so you have an answer to your uncle or your party friend who wears a t-shirt saying, "Save water, drink beer." The idea here is, let's stop with water and replace it with beer. After all, that's what New Yorkers did, even for kids, prior to getting tap water? Well, this study published last week in Environmental Science and Technology looked into 94 beer samples and found that 95% of those had detectable levels of PFAS and that 16% exceeded the drinking water limit for PFOA and 5% for PFOS. And this is absolutely logical. Breweries are located in areas with detectable PFAS in drinking water. They tap into the same sources and the same causes lead to the same results. So no, sorry, you're not safe from PFAS even if you fully switch to beer.
Who would have thought?
Okay, so now that I have, as the party pooper I am, listed everything that doesn't work, let's move to my last section.
Thank you!
What can you do to protect your family and yourself if you're concerned about the PFAS in your tap water? 3 ideas, essentially, 2 of them being pretty similar, and the third being the one I'd recommend. As I said minutes ago, we, water professionals, know how to remove PFAS from water. The 3 most common approaches being activated carbon, ion exchange, and reverse osmosis. Now, at individual household level, ion exchange is more used to remove harmless minerals like calcium and magnesium, and it's not necessarily the same resins you would use to remove PFAS. So let's put that one aside. For now, it's not practical. But idea number 1, get an under-the-sink activated carbon filter. You could also get a point-of-entry activated carbon filter you'd put in your basement. That would cover all your home's water uses, but it's also substantially more expensive, so let's stick with under the sink. That will cover drinking and cooking, and brushing your teeth if you brush your teeth in the kitchen. Okay, none of what follows is sponsored, endorsed, or affiliated. It's a thought experiment for you to gauge the interest of the solution. I looked up those 2 filters from Water Filter Guru, one with an initial cost of $550 and the other with an initial cost of $108. The typical US household uses 416,000 liters of water per year, while the typical European household only uses 246,000. So let's average that at 330,000 liters per year. 5% of that will be from the kitchen sink, so 16,500 liters to treat with our activated carbon in a year. The expensive filter is rated for 7,600 liters, so I'll be generous and consider that in the first year, we'll replace it once after 6 months. The replacement cartridge is costing about $400. The cheaper option is rated for 2,500 liters per cartridge, so you'll replace it 6 times in the year, each replacement cartridge costing about $100. So in our first year, the expensive system costs us $950 and the cheaper only $708. It doesn't come for free. Sure, but let's compare it to the absolute cheapest it gets with bottled water. If we take there the bulk large bottles, it still costs about 20 to 30 cents per liter, so our activated carbon option is 5 times cheaper. Now, side note here for the business people watching this. I found activated carbon under the sink filters for $18 on AliExpress, ranked by the manufacturer for over 18,000 liters of use. Let's only believe half of that and take a replacement cartridge costing $11. It makes for a yearly cost of $29 and a surcharge of 0.2 cents per liter. I never said it's reliable and I never said it will work. God knows what's in that filter, but if you're soulless, you can dropship the hell out of that with a 95% profit margin.
But I don't recommend it.
So that's my idea number 1. An under-the-sink activated carbon filter will get your PFAS out. The cost is moderate, but it also has drawbacks. Activated carbon filters are prone to bacterial growth if they're not maintained well, and they can have some performance inconsistency, again, more so if not maintained well. So you could make sure to replace your cartridges in time, backwash from time to time and call it a day, or you could go with my idea number 2, pretty similar, I give you that, a reverse osmosis under the sink solution. You will thus get an even improved removal of PFAS because RO is fully agnostic and will take out everything the same, and you can't really get maintenance wrong. When your filter is clogged, you will notice that the flow is low. But the initial system cost is a bit higher with a $300 to $800 range. You'll waste quite some water on the reject side. You'll slightly make up the difference on the replacement cartridges that are cheaper than the activated carbon ones, but here again, I did the calculation of the 3 filters recommended by Water Filter Guru. It will cost you about $850 a year, so you'll be again in that 4 to 6 cents surcharge range. And this time, the AliExpress alternative costs about $110 a year, so sorry dropshippers, but you'll have to live with only 87% profit margin.
Tough times.
Reverse osmosis is also imperfect, as the common under-the-sink filters would reject about twice as much water than they produce, which can be wasteful. And there's a drawback to RO taking out everything, which is that it takes out everything, including the minerals you may have wanted to keep. So you may need to put minerals back in that water. But before I move to the solution I'd recommend, let's recap our options. We've got bottled water that's not proven to be PFAS-free and costs at best 20 cents per liter and 10 times more for a branded alternative. Then we've got under-the-sink filters that cost, for the normal ones, about 4 to 6 cents per liter, while for the drop-shipped, bottom-priced alternative, I would hardly recommend. That can go down to 0.2 cents per liter. But if you followed my ramble closely...
That was hard!
Whoa, calm down! Sorry. Well, I gave it away minutes ago. Removing PFAS from tap water at municipal water plants level costs 15 to 30 cents, but per cubic meter. So that's 0.015 to 0.03 cents per liter. That's 10 times cheaper than the doubtful AliExpress option, 200 times cheaper than the under-the-sink approach, and of course, 1,000 times cheaper than bottled water, which, did I say it already? Is not even guaranteed to be PFAS-free for that price. Now, the logical follow-up question here is, but if it is that much cheaper per liter, and that much safer as well, why do we not generalize PFAS removal? Well, there are several reasons, but they all boil down to one:
Money.
As crazy as it sounds, we're not going for the cheapest solution because of costs. Look, we've got a great example with the US. The American Water Works Association is suing the federal government over their cost estimate of PFAS removal. I won't go into the details of the lawsuit, but the bottom line is that the federal government estimates the costs of removing PFAS from tap water to be $1.5 billion per year, while the AWWA aims at a budget of $3.5 billion, which is an almost 1-to-3 ratio and quite a lot of money to find if you don't know who's paying the difference. But let's put this into perspective. There are 127 million households in the US. So even if we take the AWWA's highest estimate, that's $27 per year and household, which is the price of our doubtful AliExpress activated carbon under the sink filter, not taking into account the potential 145% tariff, and not forgetting that for this price, this time, you get 100% of your home's water PFAS-free, and not just the 5% you use in the kitchen. You can shower PFAS-free for free. You can water your vegetable garden for free. And that is today's prices, where we barely have any solution to monitor PFAS live in water treatment plants, and hence have to be very conservative in operation, which leads to higher operation costs, so it will definitely decrease in the future. So I guess you get my point here. The best option is the one where we mutualize the cost as a group, as a village, as a community. First, because it's the best financial option no matter what, and also because it protects the lowest income citizens from seeing a resource as crucial to life as clean water to become unaffordable. Now, if I didn't convince you yet, let's discuss it in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if I did convince you that this is indeed the best option, what you can do about it is tell your local decision makers that when they gracefully, with public money, sponsor bottled water for schools, kindergartens, and elder homes, they may rather, for a fraction of the cost, invest in a filtration step that will benefit everyone. So when you receive that letter, and I fear you will, don't panic along your neighbors that will rush to the supermarket to get bottled water. Tell that story instead. If you don't want to wait for the letter and want to know what's actually in your tap water right now, I have to mention that it's as easy as it gets through my partner Simple Lab's TapScore platform. Full disclosure, this video is not sponsored by Simple Lab, but my podcast is. I don't get a cent if you order from them, but I'm linking you their PFAS screening water test in the show notes. Finally, if you want to further dig the PFAS topic, check out this video where I discuss PFAS sources, regulations, finance, PFAS removal, but also destruction. And if you're ready for a more advanced conversation, check my interview with Emily Hicks, the co-founder of FredSense, and probably the only company with a commercial field test for PFAS as we speak. It's on the podcast channel, and if you subscribe, I'll see you next time.